A very good evening and welcome to all the attendees. These webinars are brought to you from Be Singular. Be Singular is a unique learning platform that empowers the next generation to create a real and responsible impact in the world by working with technologies of the future. We teach exponential technologies to make our next gen better place to solve global great challenges. We also have a Be Singular Future Leaders Club. We operate in a phygital mode where we have physical centers and we also have online classes. In order to enroll for the Be Singular online classes, you can visit www.besingular.com. The Exponential Leaders Club is a by invitation club only, and it encourages students to come across with their great ideas, big dreamers who have a forward-looking approach, and they can work together from different environments, from the comfort of their home, and share experiences, foster ingenuity, benefit each other, not only in terms of the learning experience, the future generations as well. Be Singular Social, which has organized these webinars, is a non-profit entity which has been launched by Be Singular in collaboration with the Banyan, a leading child daycare center chain. Our objective is to invest our resources to help foster exceptional educational experiences and learnings for the families. I have great pleasure in introducing to you today's speaker, Kaushal Kumbar. Kaushal is a CA MBA from UC Berkeley and an alumnus of Harvard Business School. He's an out-of-box thinker. He's extremely dynamic with a practical approach to managing various enterprises across diverse geographies and culture. Through his career, he has been an investment banker. He owns several tea estates and his own tea brand. He runs a real estate group. He's a mentor and an investor into several startups. Kaushal indulges in writing and he has penned his ideas on a variety of diverse topics. Today's session is going to be focusing on a completely different series on overcoming different writers' block, maybe talking about different writing styles, and then there is a third concluding session on the same. Over to you, Kaushal, and I welcome once again all the attendees to this particular webinar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to this second session of our webinar on writing your own life story. But before we dive into the topic today, I just wanted to wish all of you the very best in dealing with this lockdown that we are all a part of. And I hope you're making good use of the time that you have in your hand. You're probably, hopefully, picking up a new skill or learning something new. Use the time constructively. But above all, take care of yourselves and your families and stay safe. So, I'm actually going to start with a small recap of what we did the last time around. There you go. So the last time we spoke about the hows of last time around, we covered the how of the what of creative writing. We actually discussed the definition of creative writing. And sorry, I'm just trying to get this PPT right. There you go. So in the last session, like I said, we covered the what of creative writing. We discussed the definition of creative writing and its purpose. And we also spent some time looking at the various elements that go into crafting a good story. We spoke, if you remember, we spoke about all of these things that you see on the slide in front of you. We spoke about how you could decide on a theme for your story, about plots and plot ideas, including the need for subplots. We spoke about character development and how giving your characters credible backstories is important. We discussed how to create conflict and the importance of conflict in moving your story forward. We also discussed about setting or fashioning a world, and about narration, including the three basic styles of narration. Hopefully you guys will remember, first person singular, third person limited, and third person omniscient. Uh, we finally dwelt a little bit on the importance of dialogues, and how descriptive writing was really the lifeblood of any story. And lastly, of course, I shared the 7-point structure for writing stories with all of you. To run through it once again, a character is in a situation with a problem. They try to solve the problem, but fail, making it worse. And then they make a final attempt, which may either succeed or fail. And the consequence is not as expected. So that's a story structure that you can use to write about your stories. Write your stories. So I hope all the above, when we spoke about all the elements that go into crafting the story and the 7-point structure, hopefully it gave you a basic idea of what it takes to write a good, effective story. Did it? I hope it did. But I'm also sure that the theory helps, but it only goes a certain way. It clarifies a lot of the doubts that you all might have had, but I'm sure all of us can use practical tips on how you could use the theoretical knowledge that would enable you to get a head start, really. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the how of creative writing, as opposed to the what that we covered in the last session. But before we start, I must answer a question that was asked after the first session last time. Someone wanted to know if he could start writing, at the age of 43. He was already 43, and he wanted to find out whether it was already too late for him to start writing, and whether he could start writing at the age of 43. So, I'm sure all of you have heard of a gentleman called Jack Reacher, a character called Jack Reacher. He's a character that's been created by a writer called Lee Child. And I will let Lee Child answer that question. Did you guys see that? So, like Lee Child also says, and like I explained that day also, and I want to explain today again, there is absolutely no age at which you need to, at which you can begin writing. You can begin writing at any age. There is no such thing as, an early age or a late age. So let's jump right in. Now that we've established that it's never too late to start writing, let's start this session. And I'm going to start this session on writing with a discussion on the importance of reading. I can't stress it enough. Read up to 2 books a week if you can, more if you can manage that. First of all, the reading habit, it refines your language skills, and it'll give you uh, it'll give you a lot of knowledge even otherwise. So we also have a third ulterior motive now, which is that when we read books, we will now read it with an idea of understanding the craft of writing. How is the plot constructed? Do these characters seem real? What elements make it a wonderful reading experience? What was the role that the author played here? How did he twist and turn things? So, the best way, like I said, to get a good handle on the craft of writing is to read good books. Good books in the genre that you wish to write in, or even otherwise, just a lot of eclectic reading. It's literally the best gift that you can give to yourself. The more you read books, particularly outside your comfort zone, the more your tastes and maturity will deepen. And there was a writer, I forget the name, but there was a writer who said, if you've read 1,000 books, when you start writing, the words just flow. Um, on your screens, you can see what J.K. Rowling says. I do believe something very magical can happen when you read a good book. And it's true. Books can take you into a completely different world. They can help you escape your immediate surroundings. It doesn't matter if you're in a lockdown. It doesn't matter if you're tense about something. It doesn't matter if other things in life not going well. The minute you start reading, you're able to escape all of that. So reading, I would say, is an essential part, absolutely, of attempting to write well. If you haven't read enough, you probably will not be able to write very well. So before you start writing, before you attempt to, put your story down on paper, I would very strongly urge you to read as many books as you can, particularly in the genre that you are trying to write in. If you're trying to write a sort of a whodunit or a detective story, crime thriller, read books in that genre. If you're trying to write a romance, read books in that genre. But please do read. So now that we've got the importance of reading, I've communicated that to you. Let us dedicate ourselves to organizing and shaping your book project. So first of all, I think it's the most important thing is to bring your idea to reality. How do you do that? The simplest way that I find of doing that is to create a folder in a computer or a laptop, or to dedicate a thick notebook to saying this is what will hold my writing, this is what will hold my manuscript, this is where I will write. What you can also do is perhaps give this manuscript a name. The name only helps. It can change at a later date. It doesn't matter what name you give it today. It can change at a later date. But it just helps to validate that entire process in your own mind. And it helps you to visualize. Instead of saying, that it's an abstract concept, if you give it a name, it helps you to think about your book uh, as something concrete, more than a mere thought. And I find that that's a very helpful way of convincing yourself that you're going ahead with it, that your book is taking shape, that you're now finally on the journey to getting your book out. Fine-tuning what your book is going to be about is the extremely crucial next step. The idea is not to have a chapter scheme in writing. as much as a blueprint really. But when you put down a sort of an intended chapter scheme, it's like an entity of your book that lives in your mind. Then you'll be able to recall that this is how I want to start my book. This is what goes into it in the middle chapters. This is how a character behaves, or this is where I'm going to end my book, and this is my ending, sort of thing. So, like I said, it's important to move your book from an idea to a thing that can be perceived. Of course, there's no guarantee that your book will eventually turn out to be what you're planning at this early stage. Books literally find themselves, and while you might start out by writing a story that's in your mind, as the characters develop, as the story develops, as your narration goes uh, on, you'll find that maybe there is another character speaking to you from within the story, and you need to change direction. But having said that, the idea of putting a structure in place is that it gives you a good starting point, an effective starting point. So, if you've read books, you'll know that most books are the most memorable ones, at least, have very layered writing. What do I mean by layered writing? It's like while the author is consciously saying one thing to you, he's also implying several other things hidden between the sentences. There's a lot of depth, and a lot of things are said either very economically, using very, very few words, or through silences, or without even saying them effectively. He's saying a lot of other things between the lines that he's creating. So when you read, you should actually think hard and note down all the elements that you would like your book to have. Similarly, once you've created this folder in your laptop or in your computer, or you've created this sort of journal, you must note down all the elements, all the facts, the information, the plot twists that you can think of and that you will keep thinking of. You'll probably get ideas while you're showering or late at night, or and a lot of these ideas are fleeting. They're not very well defined ideas, quite nebulous really. So unless you have something to note them down there and then, or you're able to capture those thoughts effectively, a lot of these thoughts and a lot of potentially very good thoughts, very good plot twists, very good elements will probably be lost. So these things, these data points, you must add to your journal or your laptop throughout the duration of your writing. Which is why most writers will maintain that keeping a journal or a diary is really very, very important for a writer, because an idea can strike anytime. You can get an idea during a normal conversation with your friend, or from a movie that you're watching, or you've gone shopping and you see a character, and that character is either so quirky or so stands out so much that you want to incorporate something similar into your book. So most characters in books are really inspired from real life. And the only way to capture all of these things is for you to keep a journal, or keep writing them down. And like I said, if a journal is not handy, or if it's not feasible to write things down, then the other tool that I think all of us, it's become universal now, the cell phone. We all obsess and constantly use that. So why not use it as a tool in our writing journey as well? All these cell phones have pages for writing notes. So use the notes page heavily and jot down your stray thoughts, maybe even a beautifully constructed sentence that you've heard, plot ideas that you're getting through the day or night, and finally, all your unique thoughts or musings that you can later include in your book. So that is how you can actually start the process of imagining your book. Then, of course, comes the importance of a work routine. This would be a great time once you've organized your folders on your laptop, and now you have your broad outline of a story in mind. You know that you're finally going to get down to writing your story. This would be a great time to think about the timelines. Now, first and foremost, don't set yourself an end date. That puts enormous pressure on you. I mean, don't say, I have to finish my book in the next 2 months and get it published. It doesn't work like that. And if you put that sort of timelines in, A, it would be impractical, and two, it would just lead to a lot of pressure on you. So don't pressure yourself. But that said, think of what would be a good timeline. What would be a good routine for writing? How much time are you able to budget? All of us have either jobs or uh, other work that we do. We run offices or houses or our students or work or things like that, things that are unavoidable. So from within that routine, how much time can you really budget? Whether it is daily, weekly, how much time do you think in its entirety can you devote to this book project? Do you want to do you know are you setting out thinking that, oh, this is something that I'm going to knock off in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks? Abhi to lockdown mein 6 din baki hai, there's still 6 days to go for the lockdown. Maybe we'll knock it off in those 6 days. Doesn't work like that. So please budget how much time you're going to need. And while I'm saying that, don't set end dates, don't set deadlines for yourself. The flip side is that an open-ended project is also not very good, because it just doesn't lead to closure. If you don't uh, give yourself some timelines, not something that will pressure you, but some timelines, then things just drift. You will keep drifting, and it may not find closure at all. So the best is that a timetable, an effective timetable, must emerge out of your personal constraints, out of your routine, and you must stick to that. So this reminds me of a story that I heard from, again, a writer friend of mine. She mentions that she was at a book launch event, and the speaker uh, was on the mic, was talking about her writing routine, and said that, oh, I write 1,000 words every day, come rain, shine, hell, or high water. I will write 1,000 words every day, which means at the end of 2 months, I have about 60,000 words, and it takes me maybe another couple of months to polish and edit my work. And by that process, I can effectively write 3 novels a year. I'm sorry. So this friend of mine was quite amused, because till then this writer had only written one novel, and since neither I nor she has heard of this particular writer ever again, I don't know whether her accounting system works actually. But that's one way of doing it. The moral of this story really is that every writer has his or her own method of setting a routine. Um, on the flip side, I'm also given to understand that there are people who manage to write an entire novel in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks. Uh, I am, I really don't know how they manage to do that, because that is not something that I would ever be able to imagine. If I am writing a book, I don't think I can even forget writing the entire novel. Probably it's difficult to complete one chapter in a week or two. But all this goes to show really is that different people write in different ways, and that each book has its own journey. So once again, maybe it would be a good idea to listen to what a very celebrated author, Jan McEwan. He's written a bestseller book called Solar. What he says about his work ethic. So let's hear him. So now that you have a fair idea of how you could incorporate writing in your daily routine, I'm sure you heard what McEwan said. He makes sure that he is at his table every day when he has a book going, and he tries to write between 500 and 800 words prior to lunch. But if he thinks that he's in that flow and he's getting ideas and he's able to take that forward, then he keeps writing. So Shweta, who introduced this webinar, asked me specifically, how do you think people can get over writer's block? And that's one way of getting over writer's block. You go to your workplace and you sit down, and irrespective of whether it's making sense or not, whether your story idea is flowing or not, uh, make yourself write at least 500 words. You will find that the first day is very, very difficult. You just don't know what to write about. So if you don't know what to write about the weather. I'm sure you can use description of the weather somewhere in your book, or write about the conversation that you had with your aunt last night. But when you keep doing that for 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 days, you will find that on the eighth day, words do start to flow, and you will be able to go back to making sense and writing things from your story that will take your story forward. So, like Neil Gaiman says, the quote on the screen, this is how you do it. You sit down at the keyboard and you put one word after another until it's done. It's that easy and it's that hard. So there are no shortcuts. You've got to keep to that routine. So now let's focus a little bit on some of the specifics of writing your book, on how you could some of the shortcuts that you could use. So the first thing is how do you create a plot line? So there are actually two types of writers. Those who will have their plot completely ready before they begin to write. Let's call them the plotters. The plotters have their plot in place. They know exactly the arc of the story, where they're going to begin, how their story is going to end, etc., etc. And they follow extreme discipline, as you can understand. Someone who has that entire arc of the story in place before he starts writing, he is someone who's pretty organized and disciplined. So he follows these sort of writers follow extreme discipline in keeping to their plot and their timelines, and they are the ones who most likely to not call their publishers and say, "Oh, hang on, can I have 6 more months? I'm still not ready." So these are the guys who, if they say, "I will have my book ready by X date," will probably do that. The other sort of people are what you can call, instead of plotters, the pantsers. And why pantsers? Because as the name suggests, they fly by the seat of their pants. They let their writing flow. Let it surprise even them. So they are the ones who will let the story dictate what comes next. They don't believe in creating a rubric. They don't believe in creating a set plot line and not deviating from that. uh, they will let characters speak to them, let the story flow whichever way it is flowing, and it takes its own sweet time to get to where they want to, or where they're satisfied that yes, now it's all come together. So I personally believe that both of these, the plotters and the pantsers, are really mythical creatures, and they depict two extremes. I i don't believe that you can actually have people um, either like the plotters or the pantsers. You most likely are a mix of both these two systems. And depending on your personality, you might actually tend towards one or the other, but you can't really be one in its entirety. And so it should be. You should use a mix of structure, but you should also let your creativity flow. So that's important. You've got to either decide on whether you're going to do a plot line and create a complete plot, maybe not the entire plot before you start writing, but at least the main features of the plot, and going to stick to that, or are you going to be able to just start writing, and you will keep using, as long as you broadly know where the story is going, you will broadly let it write itself, so to say. So some other rules in writing, and there's some shortcuts and that I'd actually encourage you to follow. So when you're writing, the first rule that you should follow is one that a lot of writers, a lot of creative writing classes, courses will emphasize upon. And it says, show, don't tell. So as Anton Chekhov, the very famous Russian writer, once said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of it on a shard of glass." What did he mean? He's saying don't make your writing dry. Don't make it, a recital of facts by saying the moon is shining. Don't tell me stuff which is like a dry information report or dry newspaper report. Instead of that, make it as lyrical as you can. Paint a picture with your words. Instead of saying the man was angry, could you maybe say the man clenched his fists and hissed beneath his breath? It's the same thing, really. You're still showing to your readers that the man is angry, the man is irritated, the man is vexed. He's not in his he's not able to control his anger, but just a different way of saying it. So it's all about unpacking the emotions around what you're trying to say, and finding ways to let your readers see the story instead of you telling them to it. So another rule that a lot of writers swear by is this: all adverbs must die. This is something that a lot of writers will lay a great deal of emphasis on. One of my favorite writers, J.K. Rowling, has gone on record to say that if she could go back and rewrite all her books, the one thing that she would make sure of is that she would kill all the adverbs. Now, why does she say that? Listen to this. Instead of using, uh, instead of saying, I ran quickly, can you say, I sprinted? Or instead of saying, I shouted loudly, can you say, I screamed? Do you see what is happening here? Instead of using adverbs, you're actually giving power to the verbs. I ran quickly, you're defining ran. Instead of that, when you say I sprinted, sprint is the verb that you are actually letting hold. You're giving all the power to sprinted. So it's once you actually start practicing this, once you start practicing not using adverbs, you will see how it changes the face of your writing. It'll seem much more lyrical. It'll seem much more as if you're painting pictures with your words, instead of. So, these are two rules that you must use while writing. The other rule that you can use is, at appropriate places, you can increase the tension in your story. By increasing tension, you're able to grip your reader that much more effectively, and you'll be able to keep them hooked. So this is one way of increasing the tension in your story. I suggest maybe you can take a picture of this if you want. Um, don't let your characters have what they want. When you keep denying them what they want, there's someone who wants to go to America, and now you keep putting obstacles in his place, in his way, and not allow him to go to America. So it's always about, he's always planning and plotting on how he can go. Ask how you can make your character situation worse. Not only are you not allowing him to go to America, you've suddenly made his father fall ill. Now his situation has become worse. He can't go, and now there's another reason for him not to be able to go. Build flaws and conflict into your setting or story world. Now, can you show an internal argument that, oh, I also have two of my brothers here, maybe they will be able to take care of my father, can I go? And then how he struggles with that, how his affection for his father is preventing him from going. At the same time, he wants to make a career, or he wants to study abroad, and that is why he wants to go to America. So those sort of flaws and conflicts in your story setting will create a lot of tension. Create conflict between your characters. Can your character and his brother have a fight on why you are hellbent? Your character is hellbent on going to America when the father is unwell. So, these are the sort of things that you can do to create. Increase the consequences of failure for the hero. So, because he's not able to go to America in time, the university which gave him a place to study, let's say, for his master's program, is now writing to him that if you don't report within the next 1 week, we'll offer that place to someone else. So he can't afford not to go, and he can't afford to go. That is how you increase the tension in your story. How do you build characters? When you set about creating characters, a good idea would be to sort of think of the character along 5 dimensions. Those 5 dimensions: description, likes, dislikes, motivation, and flaws. So every character that you're putting in your story, map him along these 5 dimensions. Try and figure out what his likes are, what makes him get out of bed every day, what is he scared of, What is he excited about? How would he react in various situations? Make the character as real as you can and show his warts along with his goodness, his quirks, his foibles. As long as you can make your characters believable, your audience, your readers will identify with them that much more and will believe in them, will empathize with these characters. So it's very important to make your character as genuine seeming as possible. If necessary, model your character on someone from real life, someone that you think fits the mold of the kind of character that you're trying to put in your story. If it's an if it's a cantankerous old aunt, look within your relations. Is there a cantankerous old aunt that you can model your character on? Or if there is a sweet little kid, your brother's daughter, can you use her uh, and model your character of a little baby in your story on her? So that's how you can build characters. So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to give you some shortcuts on how you can go about doing some of the aspects of your writing. So this is another one. So when you're writing dialogues, uh, how can you what are the tips that you can use to write better dialogues? A lot of times writers, particularly those who've just about started writing, will think that a dialogue needs to imitate a real life conversation. Absolutely not. Do not imitate a real life conversation. Have you ever heard a real life conversation? For example, when I'm talking now, I will use or I will stop, I will use this word seven times. When there is a conversation happening between five people, everyone will talk over themselves, over each other, and you will probably not be able to make enough sense, or otherwise the dialogue is going to be very dry. A real life dialogue, for example, if I come home and I see my brother, I'm probably going to ask him, how was your day? And he'll tell me the usual. Now, that's not the sort of dialogue that goes into your book. How was your day? Usual. That's so dry, and there is nothing that excites your reader in dialogue of that sort. So basically, dialogue that you write in a book is is not like your everyday conversations. It's like everyday conversations which has been heavily edited to take out all the boring stuff out of it, all the ums, ahs, hemming out of it, and then leaving it just uh, with enough material to be able to excite and hold your readers. So these are 10 ways that you could hook your readers. I don't really have enough time, otherwise I would have read out an excerpt to you from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is one book that I recommend you read if you haven't. Some of the most dynamic and funny dialogues that I have read in a long, long time. So these tips, maybe you can look at them again, take a picture. I'll just run through them quickly. And live in dialogues with conflict. Like I said, when you are showing conflict, instead of writing a descriptive thing, he fought with his brother, if you can actually make that into dialogue, it becomes that much more gripping. Don't use dialogue tags. He said, she said, he said so and so. Then she replied with so and so. No, that's not how you write dialogue. It's easy if you can write coherently, then it's easy to follow who's saying what in any event. Don't disturb the flow, don't distort the flow with he said, she said. Give each character a voice. Don't make the mistake of making one guy say everything. If it's a scene that involves five people, yes, the main character may have some additional dialogues as compared to the rest of them, but everyone should have a voice. Otherwise, what's the point of putting them there? And of course, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So you need to punctuate and format well. Every line should start with every new speaker should start from a new line. You should be able to use your inverted commas well. You should be able to punctuate well. Also, when you're writing this dialogue, it helps to read it aloud, because you will be able to make out immediately whether you're writing dialogue that is effective or not. You don't even need someone else to come and tell you that. If you just read it aloud, you'll know whether it is dry, whether it is exciting, whether it is keeping you hooked or not. Like he says, avoid info dumps. Don't give out information that is already known in your dialogues. What I mean to say is, if you've already established a relationship between the main character and his brother, don't again through dialogue establish that relationship or re-establish that relationship. That's already been done, and so on and so forth. So, the problem is that we only have 1 hour, and I think we've already crossed 50 minutes of that. What I'd like you to do now is to see another video. And this video is, I've gone through this entire presentation almost without taking a name. So now you can allow me this. So this video is again from J.K. Rowling, one of my all-time favorites. Um, she's giving you tips on writing, and she should know, right? She's sold over 600 million copies of her books. So she certainly knows what she's talking about. So let's have a look at that video.